Arguments are not won by volume or logic. They are won by control, and most people expose their weakness the moment they speak. Every careless word hands power to the other person. If you argue the way everyone else does, you are already losing. What you are about to learn is not about sounding clever. It is about becoming unreadable. By the end, your presence will unsettle people more than your words, and arguments will end before they ever begin. The most dominant comeback is silence delivered with intention, not hesitation. Most people rush to respond because silence makes them feel exposed, as if not speaking means losing ground. In reality, that reflex reveals dependence on validation. When you pause calmly, without visible tension or urgency, you reverse the power dynamic instantly. The other person expects resistance or engagement. Instead, they are met with stillness, and stillness creates pressure. Silence forces the speaker to face their own words without interference. There is no argument to bounce against, no emotional feedback to feed on. Their momentum collapses inward. They begin filling the space themselves, explaining more than necessary, justifying positions that were never challenged. This is where imbalance reveals itself. The unaware interpret silence as weakness and keep talking. The aware understand that every additional word spoken under pressure dilutes authority. Intentional silence also signals emotional independence. You are not compelled to defend your identity, your intelligence, or your position. You are choosing not to engage, not because you lack words, but because words are unnecessary. This distinction is subtle but decisive. People instinctively sense when silence is chosen rather than forced. Chosen silence communicates confidence, self-control, and dominance without confrontation. There is also a psychological hierarchy embedded in silence. Those with less power feel the need to explain themselves upward. Those with more power rarely explain downward. When you remain silent, you subconsciously place the other person in the position of seeking approval or reaction. They feel evaluated, even if you say nothing. This is why silence unsettles people more than insults. It removes the familiar structure of conflict and replaces it with uncertainty. Silence, however, only works when it is clean, no eye rolling, no defensive posture, no visible irritation. Your body language must remain relaxed, composed, almost indifferent. The message is simple and final: you are unaffected. You are not fighting for control because you already have it. In most interactions, the person who can sit comfortably in silence owns the space. Very few understand this because silence requires inner stability. It demands that you do not fear misinterpretation or temporary discomfort. But once mastered, silence ends arguments without escalation. Not by overpowering the other person, but by allowing them to expose themselves. And once that happens, nothing more needs to be said. A genius comeback reframes instead of reacts, because reaction keeps you trapped inside someone else's agenda. Most people argue on instinct, responding to tone, accusation, or emotion without questioning the frame they are being pulled into. The moment you accept that frame, you surrender control. Reframing quietly shifts the ground beneath the interaction, making the original attack irrelevant rather than opposed. When someone provokes you, they expect either resistance or compliance. Both outcomes serve them. Resistance validates their importance. Compliance confirms their dominance. Reframing denies them both. It changes what the exchange is actually about. A calm, precise line that alters the context forces the other person to adapt. And most people are not skilled at adapting under pressure. They prepared for a fight, not a shift. Reframing works because power is not about winning points, but about defining reality. The person who defines the meaning of the interaction controls it. By redirecting the focus from emotion to principle, from accusation to perspective, or from noise to outcome, you elevate yourself above the exchange. You are no longer reacting to stimuli. You are setting conditions. This approach also exposes unconscious behavior. When someone is emotionally invested in proving a point, reframing highlights their lack of control without calling it out directly. They may continue arguing, but now they sound disconnected from what matters. Their words lose alignment. The audience, even if silent, senses the shift. Authority moves quietly to the one who appears centered and deliberate. Most people fail at reframing because they over-explain. True reframing is concise and final. It does not argue against the original statement, it renders it secondary. A short, controlled response that changes the lens is enough. Anything more reopens the door to debate. The goal is not to dominate verbally, but to reposition psychologically. Reframing also protects you from emotional contamination. You are not absorbing the other person's tension or urgency. You are filtering it, then responding from a higher level of awareness. This separation is felt immediately. The other person realizes they cannot pull you into chaos. That realization alone weakens their position. Very few understand that arguments end not when someone is defeated, but when their framework collapses. Once the frame is gone, there is nothing left to defend or attack. You are no longer in the argument. You are above it, watching it dissolve on its own. Never meet emotion with emotion, because the moment you do, you abandon authority. Emotional mirroring feels natural to the unconscious mind. When someone raises their voice, sharpens their tone, or injects urgency into their words, the instinct is to respond in kind. That instinct is precisely how control is lost. The exchange stops being strategic and becomes reactive. Power never operates reactively. Emotion is energy, and energy seeks reflection. When you reflect it back, you validate it. You confirm that their emotional state has influence over you. Calm refusal to mirror emotion breaks this loop. It creates asymmetry. One person is charged, the other is grounded. In any social or psychological dynamic, asymmetry determines dominance. The one who remains emotionally neutral controls the direction of the interaction. Most people confuse emotional intensity with conviction. They believe that raising the emotional temperature strengthens their position. In reality, it exposes insecurity. Emotional escalation is often a signal of internal instability, not confidence. When you remain calm in the presence of heightened emotion, you silently communicate that you are not threatened by their state. That message is felt immediately, even if it is never articulated. Calmness functions as a mirror that shows the other person what they look like. When someone is animated, defensive, or aggressive and you respond with measured composure, the contrast becomes uncomfortable for them. They hear themselves more clearly. Their own behavior begins to feel excessive. This is why calm dominance unsettles people. It does not confront them directly. It allows self-awareness to creep in. There is also a hierarchy embedded in emotional regulation. Those at the top of any structure do not need to display emotional volatility. They delegate, decide, and observe. Those lower in the hierarchy react upward, emotionally invested in outcomes they do not control. When you maintain emotional neutrality, you place yourself psychologically above the exchange. You are no longer inside the conflict, you are overseeing it. This does not mean suppression or emotional numbness. It means mastery. You are aware of your emotional response, but you do not let it dictate your behavior. Most people are ruled by the immediate need to express what they feel. The disciplined individual chooses whether expression serves their position. Often, it does not. Calm responses also disrupt manipulation. Many arguments are not about truth, but about provoking a reaction. Anger, defensiveness, urgency, these are tools used to pull you into an emotional state where judgment weakens. When those tools fail, the manipulator loses leverage. They may escalate further, or they may retreat. Either outcome works in your favor. Your tone matters as much as your words. A slow, steady delivery communicates control over time itself. You are not rushed. You are not pressured. You are deciding, not reacting. Even a brief response, delivered calmly, carries more weight than a passionate monologue. The nervous system reads this before the intellect does. Most people never develop this skill because it requires tolerance for discomfort. Remaining calm while someone else is emotionally charged feels counterintuitive. It can feel passive, even vulnerable, to the untrained mind. But in reality, it is an advanced form of dominance. You are choosing not to compete on their level. You are forcing the interaction to rise to yours. Over time, this approach reshapes how others engage with you. People become more measured around those who do not react impulsively. They sense that emotional tactics will not work. Conversations become shorter, clearer, and more respectful. Arguments lose their fuel before they begin. In the end, emotional neutrality is not about winning arguments. It is about preserving position. When you do not surrender control of your internal state, no one can take control of the interaction. And once that is understood, arguments stop being battles and start becoming observations. Questions are more lethal than statements because they reverse the direction of pressure. Statements push outward and invite resistance. Questions pull inward and demand processing. Most people speak to assert dominance, to prove certainty, or to protect ego. Very few understand that true control comes from forcing the other person to think while you remain still. A well-placed question interrupts momentum. When someone is arguing, they are often performing rather than reasoning. Their words are rehearsed emotionally, not logically. A precise question breaks that performance. It forces a pause. In that pause, their emotional rhythm is disrupted, and once rhythm is lost, authority weakens. You are no longer responding to their argument. You are redirecting their attention inward. The power of a question lies in its restraint. It does not accuse. It does not defend. It simply exposes gaps. When you ask calmly and then remain silent, the other person feels compelled to fill the space. Silence after a question amplifies its effect. The mind seeks closure, and in seeking it, people often reveal more than they intended. They explain motivations, justify inconsistencies, or contradict themselves without realizing it. Most people misuse questions because they ask too many or ask emotionally. That turns questions into disguised statements, which restores the original conflict. Strategic questioning is minimal and neutral. One question is enough. Anything more looks like effort, and effort signals uncertainty. The aware individual asks once and waits. Questions also shift hierarchy. When you answer questions, you are responding to someone else's frame. When you ask them, you subtly position yourself as the evaluator. This dynamic is deeply ingrained in human behavior. Teachers ask, judges ask, leaders ask. Those with less power explain. When you ask a question calmly, you step into the role of observer rather than participant. Another advantage of questions is that they bypass defensiveness. Direct statements invite rebuttal. Questions invite reflection, even if reluctantly. The mind cannot argue and reflect at the same time. For a brief moment, internal processing replaces outward aggression. That moment is often enough to dissolve the argument's intensity. Strategic questions also expose intention. Many arguments are driven by hidden goals: control, validation, status. A single question aimed at intention rather than content forces the other person to confront why they are speaking, not just what they are saying. Most people are uncomfortable with that level of self-awareness. Their confidence drops, not because they were attacked, but because they were seen. It is important that the question is not clever or theatrical. Cleverness draws attention to you. Power draws attention inward. The question should feel obvious in hindsight, almost simple. Its strength comes from timing and delivery, not complexity. Calm tone. Direct eye contact, then silence. The silence afterward is where dominance settles. Many people ruin the effect by rescuing the other person from discomfort. They explain the question, soften it, or add commentary. That is weakness. Discomfort is not cruelty. It is a necessary condition for truth to surface. When you allow the silence to exist, you allow the imbalance to correct itself. Over time, people learn that arguing with you feels different. Their usual tactics do not work. Emotional escalation fails. Volume fails. Certainty fails. What remains is exposure, and exposure is what most people are unconsciously trying to avoid. Once you understand this, you stop trying to win arguments through force. You let questions do the work. You observe, you wait, and in that waiting, control quietly transfers to you. Refusal to explain yourself is a powerful ending because explanation is often a disguised plea for acceptance. Most people believe that being understood equals being respected. In reality, excessive explanation signals insecurity about position. The moment you feel compelled to justify your choices, opinions, or boundaries, you reveal that you are negotiating your authority rather than standing in it. Weakness does not come from being wrong. It comes from needing permission. When someone challenges you and you immediately begin explaining, you hand them leverage. You implicitly accept that they are entitled to judge your reasoning. The aware individual understands that not every challenge deserves a response. Some questions are not requests for clarity, they are attempts to destabilize. Strong people assume position. They do not rush to defend it. When you refuse to explain yourself calmly, without hostility, you communicate that your stance is not provisional. It is settled. This creates psychological finality. The other person senses that further pressure will not produce access, and pressure without access quickly loses momentum. Most arguments persist because one person keeps feeding them. Explanation feeds arguments. It gives the other side material to dissect, reinterpret, and attack. Every added sentence opens another door. Refusal closes all of them at once. It is not evasive. It is selective. You are choosing not to participate in an exchange that offers no strategic value. There is also a hierarchy to explanation that most people never notice. Those lower in power explain upward. Those higher in power explain only when it serves structure or alignment. A leader may explain a decision to create cohesion, but never to seek approval. When explanation turns into persuasion, authority erodes. The line is subtle, but unmistakable to those who understand power. Refusal to explain also protects your internal clarity. Many people talk themselves out of certainty by over-verbalizing. They start with a clear boundary, then dilute it with reasoning, caveats, and emotional cushioning. By the end, the boundary no longer exists. Silence preserves clarity. Short, final statements preserve position. This does not mean becoming dismissive or arrogant. Tone matters. Refusal must be clean. No irritation, no defensiveness, just calm finality. A simple acknowledgement followed by non-engagement is enough. The message is not "you are beneath me." The message is, "this is not open for negotiation." That distinction is what makes it powerful rather than aggressive. People who rely on control through debate find this deeply unsettling. They are accustomed to pushing until they find a weak point. When none appears, they experience loss of influence. Some will escalate emotionally. Others will attempt guilt, logic, or social pressure. None of it works if you remain still. Over time, they stop trying. Refusal to explain also filters relationships. Those who respect boundaries accept your silence. Those who demand access reveal their need for dominance or validation. In this way, refusal becomes diagnostic. It shows you who relates to you from respect and who relates to you from entitlement. Most people fear refusal because they associate it with conflict. In truth, refusal often prevents conflict. Arguments only exist when both sides keep engaging. When one side disengages with composure, the argument collapses. There is nothing to fight against. No friction, no escalation. It takes discipline to hold this line because the urge to explain is deeply social. Humans are conditioned to smooth tension through words. But power is not concerned with smoothing tension. Power is concerned with maintaining structure. Once you understand that, silence becomes a tool rather than a risk. Over time, this behavior reshapes how others approach you. Questions become more respectful. Challenges become more measured. People sense that access to your reasoning is not automatic. It must be earned or invited. And because of that, when you do choose to explain, it carries weight. In the end, refusal to explain is not about shutting people out. It is about refusing to dilute yourself. When you stop justifying who you are and why you stand where you stand, arguments lose their grip. You are no longer something to be negotiated. You are something to be acknowledged. Timing decides victory because power is not only what you say, but when you choose to say it. Most people respond the moment they feel stimulated. A comment triggers them, a message provokes them, a challenge pressures them, and they react instantly. This immediacy feels natural, even honest, but it quietly signals lack of control. When you respond on impulse, you allow the other person to set the tempo. Whoever sets the tempo governs the interaction. Delayed response is not avoidance. It is regulation. It demonstrates that your internal state is not hijacked by external noise. You are not pulled forward by urgency or dragged into someone else's emotional timeline. You are choosing your moment. That choice alone establishes psychological superiority. The other person begins to wait, wonder, and recalibrate while you remain unchanged. Most arguments escalate because both sides speak too quickly. Speed amplifies emotion. It compresses thought. It rewards instinct over judgment. When you slow the exchange, you drain it of intensity. A pause creates distance between stimulus and response, and in that distance, strategy forms. The unaware feel this pause as discomfort. The aware use it as leverage. Timing also exposes motivation. When you do not respond immediately, people reveal why they were speaking in the first place. Some become impatient. Some escalate. Some retreat. Each reaction tells you more than their original words ever could. Silence becomes a diagnostic tool. You learn who seeks resolution and who seeks control. There is a deep psychological association between speed and submission. Those who feel pressured to reply quickly are often operating from fear of loss of status, loss of approval, loss of ground. Those who take their time signal that they are not afraid of temporary silence. They trust their position will remain intact without constant reinforcement. This trust reads as authority. Delayed responses also force clarity. When you eventually speak, your words are cleaner, shorter, and more decisive. You have filtered emotion out of the message. You are no longer reacting. You are concluding. A measured response after a pause carries finality. It sounds settled, not argumentative. People sense that you are not open to being pulled back into exchange. Timing controls emotional contagion. Emotions spread rapidly in fast interactions. Anger multiplies when mirrored quickly. Anxiety intensifies when urgency is matched. By slowing your response, you interrupt this transmission. You deny the other person emotional feedback. Without reinforcement, their emotional state often collapses under its own weight. Most people misunderstand delayed response as weakness because they confuse restraint with uncertainty. In reality, restraint requires certainty. You must be comfortable holding your position internally without external confirmation. That comfort is rare. This is why delayed responses feel powerful. They are a signal of internal stability. Timing also protects you from manipulation. Many arguments rely on urgency as a weapon. Answer now, respond immediately. Decide right now. Urgency compresses choice. When you refuse urgency, you reclaim autonomy. You are no longer operating inside their imposed window. You are deciding on your own terms. This principle extends beyond conversation. Messages, confrontations, accusations, demands all are weakened when you control timing. A calm delay communicates that you are not startled, cornered, or rushed. You are observing. You are assessing. That assessment phase places you above the exchange rather than inside it. It is important that the delay is intentional, not theatrical. Over-delaying to appear powerful becomes transparent. True timing feels natural, unforced, almost invisible. You do not announce your pause. You simply take it. Power never explains its methods. When you finally respond, your delivery should match the delay. Slow speech, even tone, minimal words. This alignment reinforces control. A delayed response followed by emotional outburst destroys the advantage. Timing and tone must work together. Over time, people adapt to this rhythm. They stop expecting immediate access to you. They choose their words more carefully, knowing they will not receive instant feedback. Conversations become less chaotic, more deliberate. You shape the interaction without ever stating that you are doing so. Most people live inside reaction. They believe speed equals strength. In reality, speed often equals exposure. The fastest responder is usually the most emotionally invested. The one who waits reveals nothing and learns everything. Once you master timing, arguments lose their urgency. Pressure loses its teeth. You are no longer dragged into exchanges. You step into them when it serves you. And when you do speak, the moment feels chosen, not forced. That is when words stop being noise and start becoming decisions. The final comeback is disengagement without explanation, because attention is the real currency in any argument. Most people believe words end conflicts. In reality, access does. The moment you remove access to your attention, the argument loses oxygen. No reaction, no defense, no closure offered. Just calm withdrawal. This is not avoidance. It is a decision to end the interaction on your terms. Unconscious individuals chase the last word because they believe dominance comes from finishing the exchange. They fear being misunderstood, dismissed, or left unresolved. That fear keeps them trapped in arguments long after those arguments stop serving them. The aware individual understands that closure is optional. You do not need agreement, understanding, or validation to disengage. You only need clarity. Disengagement works because it breaks the expectation loop. Arguments persist because both sides expect continued engagement. When one side exits cleanly, the structure collapses. There is no opponent left to fight, no resistance to push against. The other person is left holding their own emotional energy with nowhere to place it. This is deeply destabilizing for anyone who relies on confrontation for control. Walking away calmly communicates finality more effectively than any statement ever could. Words can be debated, silence cannot. When you disengage without explanation, you signal that the conversation no longer qualifies for your attention. This is not punishment. It is prioritization. You are not trying to win. You are choosing where your energy goes. Many people confuse disengagement with weakness because they associate strength with confrontation. That belief keeps them exposed. True strength is the ability to leave without needing to justify the exit. If someone demands an explanation and you provide one, you reopen the door. If you stay silent, the door remains closed. The difference is discipline. Disengagement also reveals power dynamics instantly. Those who respect you accept your withdrawal. Those who feel entitled to your attention escalate. They may accuse, provoke, or attempt to bait you back into engagement. This reaction exposes their dependency on control. The more composed you remain, the clearer the imbalance becomes. It is critical that disengagement is clean. No dramatic exits. No visible irritation. No final remarks designed to wound. Drama feeds attachment. Calm detachment starves it. Your body language, tone, and timing must all align. The message is subtle but absolute. This interaction has ended. Attention withdrawal also recalibrates future interactions. People learn how far they can push before access is removed. Over time, those who value your presence become more measured. Those who rely on chaos drift away. In this way, disengagement becomes a filtering mechanism. It restructures your environment without confrontation. Most people stay too long in arguments because they are trying to be fair. Fairness, in this context, is a trap. Not every exchange deserves equal participation. Some conversations exist only to extract emotional labor or provoke reaction. Engaging in them is not fairness. It is self-neglect. Disengagement preserves self-mastery. Every argument pulls attention outward. Walking away pulls attention back in. You reclaim mental space, emotional stability, and strategic clarity. This internal preservation is what makes disengagement powerful. You are not sacrificing anything. You are protecting it. There is also a psychological finality to disengagement that words cannot replicate. Statements invite reply. Silence ends cycles. When someone realizes they no longer have access to you, the dynamic changes permanently. They may replay the interaction internally, searching for leverage that no longer exists. You move on unaffected. Many fear disengagement because they worry about how it will be perceived. Power is not concerned with perception management in moments that compromise position. It is concerned with outcome. And the outcome of disengagement is simple: the argument ends and your authority remains intact. Over time, this behavior reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must respond to every challenge. You become someone who chooses engagement selectively. That shift alone elevates how others experience you. Scarcity increases value. Access becomes conditional. The ultimate truth is this: whoever controls attention controls the interaction. When you withdraw it without explanation, you reclaim power without conflict. You do not need to dominate. You simply leave. And once you understand that leaving calmly is sometimes the strongest move available, arguments lose their grip entirely. If this changed how you see arguments, like the video and subscribe. Remember this: the person who controls themselves never needs to control others. And once you understand that, silence will start working for you.